Carson area Metropolitan Planning Organization to order. May I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell.
Here.
Vice Chair Novak.
Here.
Member Casanelli. Member Dodson.
Here.
Member Erb. Member Maloney.
Here.
Member Schutte. Ex officio Member Rosenberg. Thank you. A quorum's present.
Thank you so much. We're going to go on to opening public comment, and I'll just start off with welcome to Mr. Casanelli from Lyon County. Welcome to our board. We look forward to working with you. And then the return of Mr. Erb from Douglas County. Got your appointment this morning, so congratulations. Do I have any other opening public comment for CAMPO? Okay. Then I'm going to move on to agenda item 4A, which is approval of our minutes of December 11th, 2024. Do I have corrections? I'll accept a motion for approval, please.
I move to approve the minutes from December 11th, 2024.
I will second.
I have a motion and a second for approval. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? Because you weren't legal yet. We'll go with that. You can vote if you're still a member, but that one will work. So let the record show one abstention by Mr. Casanelli. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5A, which is discussion and possible action regarding nomination and election of a chairperson and a vice chair. And I rarely take the liberty of the chair, but in this case, I would like to make this motion so that I can hand this gavel off here. So if you don't mind, I would love to make a motion. I move to appoint Gregory Novak as chairperson for a one-year term expiring at the first regular meeting of CAMPO in 2026, and appoint Lucia Maloney as the vice chairperson for a one-year term expiring at the first meeting of CAMPO.
I'd like to second.
I have a motion, a second. Any further discussion? You are brand new. Do you want to throw your hat in? No, I didn't think so, but I thought it was worthy that I asked just in case. Okay, with that, you're like, no, I know when to be quiet. With that, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Let the record reflect it was unanimous. Mr. Novak, the honor is all yours. I do think we should make the change and finish it because it's weird to do that, but there you go. Yeah, I do think that's
All right.
tacky.
Congrats. Yes.
Yay.
Welcome. It's a new year.
Uh-oh.
And tomorrow's a federal holiday, but for other reasons. So we'll see. All right. Back to our agenda. Agenda item 5B. It's for possible action. Discussion and possible action regarding proposed formal amendment 2501 for the CAMPO Federal Fiscal Year 2025-2028 Transportation Improvement Program to combine projects, add 2 new projects, and revise the funding information and names of multiple projects. And I guess, Jared, you have this one?
Thank you. Jared Cregan, Transportation Planner, for the record. We do have late material that is reflected in the District 2 Little Lane project and the Appendix 1, Table 1. For the District 2 Little Lane project, we added funding for the preliminary engineering phase of federal fiscal year 2025. For Appendix 1, Table 1, we added new funding sources and made changes to some funding amounts. As noted in the document revision history, this formal amendment to the CAMPO Transportation Improvement Program, version 25-01, consists of funding and or scheduling updates to District 3 5th Street Roundabout Project, the Curry Street Complete Streets Improvement Project, and the FTA 5339 Bus Facility Grant Awards. New projects that were added to the CAMPO tip include the District 2 Little Lane Project and the FTA 5307 Small Urban Apportionment. So we made updates to the, as stated above, Appendix 1, Table 1, and the Appendix 3, the TIP project list. The public comment period was open between December 21st 2024 through January 3rd, 2025, and no public comments have been received for that. With that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, I'll start. Given some comments was one reason we have the revisions here. But I guess the biggest one for me was the advanced construction. And I think that's probably due, just guessing, that Congress didn't give a full year's apportionment, and to move the projects forward, NDOT has to go with advanced construction. Does that sound correct? Doesn't really change much, but I just want to let everybody know. I think Congress is given through March 14th or so for the federal fiscal year, and it creates a lot of accounting headaches for everybody involved in the whole process. So with that, I don't have any problems with the changes. Any other questions or comments from the board here? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve this. Oh, public comment, yes, if there is any on this one, since it is an action item. I know. Yeah, you do it every day. No public comment, okay. All right, I'll get a motion here.
I move to approve amendment 2501 to CAMPO TIF is presented in the late material.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Okay, at this point, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Measure is approved. All right, next item. Non-action items. 6A, the Transportation Manager's Report. Chris, you're on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Chris Martinovich, Transportation Manager. Again, I also want to echo and welcome Commissioner Casanelli to the CAMPO Board. We do have many projects in Lyon County and look forward to working with you on some of those as well. So appreciate you being here. One of the items I wanted to mention today was in regards to a legislation that Congress passed that freed up some funding, and perhaps Mr. Very can add if he's familiar to elaborate as well. But there was a bill passed late in the last Congress that moved from some transportation funding from the TIFIA loan program under the infrastructure bill to the STBG formula funding through the apportionments regular way CAMPO gets some of its STBG funding. I know several $1 billion were moved. When we go through the formula funding and break it all down to CAMPO, I think it came out to be $160,000 of new formula funding in this fiscal year. They've also, as part of that act, adjusted how the TIFIA loan is going to be funded, with more money going to the STBG program over the next couple of years. So it's probably more so for larger states, but for us, it is a slight increase in our surface transportation block grant funding that we could see federal fiscal year 24, 25, and 26 through the life of the infrastructure bill. So I just wanted to mention that, a small increase, and I don't know how long that'll take to trickle through, but that act was passed by Congress back in December. So other activities that we're working on continuing with our US 50 corridor study. We're going to meet with NDOT and continue to coordinate corridor vision. We have meetings planned to be scheduled with Lyon County as well to discuss their vision of the corridor. We've had meetings with Carson City's community development about US 50 and their vision of the corridor as well. So that work continues. We do plan a CAMPO Board item here in the spring to provide an update to this board prior to release of a draft plan. We are also working on completing and kicking off the process for our regional transportation plan update. We're working the process of negotiating for some consultant support for that, but a lot of our staff time is going to be spent over the next year working on the document, the fiscal constraints, and the project list, prioritization, performance measures, and features like that are the requirements of our RTP. So kicking off that process, you'll see definitely some items over the next year related to the RTP and a lot of public outreach associated with that as well. So more to come on that. I think those are the main items I wanted to highlight at the Transportation Manager's report, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Chris, I'll start. I used to handle TIFIA. I'm glad I don't anymore. That was a lot of back and forth. You didn't mention yet, but the legislature convenes in early February, and we're one of 4 MPOs. And do you expect anything coming out of the new session that would affect CAMPO or are you going to be participating in any meetings at all?
I know that the MPOs and the RTCs across the state are coordinating on messaging and outreach to our, elected officials at all levels of the legislature, Senate, and Assembly for the different districts and Assembly districts and Senate districts in the South and the North. I do anticipate to be a part of that. There are some internal meetings going on to talk about what are our priorities, what are our focus areas. I mean, additional funding is always a focus area, and so there'll definitely be some opportunity to coordinate with different folks at the legislature during this upcoming session.
Any other?
Just because I got the information, 45 minutes ago. I just left TDD. So under the two things, and if you could find out and double check for us, but I understand at the legislature, February 4th will be like the transportation day at the legislature. So if you could just double check and let us all know if we want to attend and go as representatives for CAMPO or RTC. I think it's going to be like MPO day.
I can
Not
conf-
sure who the leader of the pack is, but I just got told from that side that I needed to be there February 4th. So maybe some of you would
I know I
like to
can
do that.
confirm that that's the date that's been set aside. The logistics of that date haven't been finalized, but I think there's going to be some working groups and an exhibition of what it is we do and just communicating transportation to the legislature and the Senate and Assemblymen. We will be participating as staff, and I'm sure all of
And
you
then
can be invited as well.
Two pieces of legislation potentially that would impact our jurisdiction is really looking, so Senator Daley, I believe, is introducing a $4.50 surcharge on hotel rooms to be able to put that money back into transportation. Not sure yet of the logistics of where he's going to target those dollars to come back in, but and then the other one is looking at the ability for local governments to implement bid districts, so business improvement districts. So if you kind of like your GIDs and your special districts, but if a business community or corridors or things want to come together to do road improvement, and so that's the secondary piece of legislation. Yeah, like a SID, but a bid, B for business. And so I'm not sure where the dynamics of that will differ from a SID, because you could do some of this in a SID, but just that's the two pieces of current legislation. And then certainly for Nevada to hold on to its funding for the Tahoe Transportation District. Last legislative session was a big deal for them to get general fund to operate, so that'll be a big deal to try and keep, and then doesn't matter on our side, but to tell California they have to pony up their match to the Nevada match. But anyway, that's what I heard today, so I might as well share.
Any other comments on this item so far? All righty. Chris, 6B, other comments and reports?
I have nothing further to provide, Mr. Chair.
Okay. No other future agenda items will be open. Said things will change. I've mentioned to some of you, there's a change of administration come January 20th, and I have no idea what's going to happen. It's going to be close, and we'll see what actually passes, but for the time being, we have laws that we have to follow and money that we're going to try and spend. So, all righty. All right. Item 7, we're back to general public comment about any other items. Mr. French?
Hello, thank you, Chair and Commission. Denny French, Carson City. I have a concern. Had been brought to my attention some areas that I had already voiced my considerations about, the ADA ramps. There are ramps that are too steep and that they hit the asphalt at such an angle that a wheelchair then is in a bad spot. and I'd like a survey of those done. And unfortunately, I didn't get a list. I was at the Historic Resource Commission meeting, and I was discussing such my considerations and concerns related to that when they were talking about different features of historical places. Some don't have sidewalks, some do, and different things like that, or the physical descript areas. Anyhow, so I would like those things to be considered, and funding for that should come easily, it seems, since it's a situation that relates to it. But the areas that had gotten a lot of, I'm sorry, the timer's not on. If I roll, please stop me. The deal is that the areas for the disabled visual some of them have dropped. They're special red cement type deals with the dots on them to help with visual aid things before you get to crosswalks. Some of those have dropped, and in other areas they have put asphalt on higher than the ramp would then relate. And all those considerations have gotten to a point where they're dangerous. And so please, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other public comments on general items? All right, well, with that, I will do my first official action and adjourn the meeting. We'll meet in 5 more minutes to start RTC.
For the Regional Transportation Commission, may I have a roll call, please?
Chair Bagwell,
Here.
Vice Chair Shudy,
Here.
Member Dodson,
Here.
Member Novak.
Here.
I mean, Commissioner Dodson, Commissioner Novak, Commissioner Maloney.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you so much. We're going to move to agenda item 3, which is our beginning public comment. Is there any public comment? Come on, Mr. Costa.
Good evening. I'm Mark Costa, Carson City resident. Wanted to go ahead and thank you for the allocation for ARPA funding, $256,837 to fully fund District 2 and 4A pavement preservation projects, $200,000 to the new pavement preservation projects split between Hillview and Lapire Drive. Had some questions regarding that. What District 2 and 4A projects were not completely funded and are now going to be funded by the ARPA? I saw in the detail that District 3 vulnerable user project is also mentioned in the staff summary, but not in the main description. I'd like to know what a vulnerable user is considered. Staff developed a prioritization method. Is there a prioritization method and analysis to determine what projects are getting Hillview and Lapire Drive ARPA funding? And what other projects are receiving the ARPA funds? There's a mention there that these funds were being divided among the 5 service districts throughout the area. Also have, in my time remaining, new subject, Wampa Lane. Wampa Lane is listed as a 2024 preservation project. It is also used as an example in the pavement management system of road that's in trouble. I forget the exact classification for that. I don't drive on Wampa very often, but I did have an occasion to do so a couple days ago. And I saw the maintenance traffic guides there on the side of the road, but Wampa itself is very rough and doesn't appear to be like any preservation was done. When will that work be completed? I see it's included in the tip, but the description talks about a multi-use path adjacent to I-580 from Modoc Court to Highway 50. So just got a hold of the tip today, or looked at the tip today. So in general, increased transparency is needed to show what work is scheduled and why it is scheduled and when it will be done. Thank you.
You're welcome. Just for every other month, Mr. Costa, we do have a report. It is also posted with our agendas that gives you the status of every project that is operating and is open, and gives you a narrative about what funding there is on that project and what status it's at. So just in case, just happens not to be this month, or I would have took you right to it, but if you look at last month, so every other month, we get a status on every project.
Is that listed in the staff report?
It's a staff
Mark Costa?
report. It's right towards the back end of our agenda, generally. It's one of
Okay.
the last 2 items or something, but we go through every project.
Oh, that'll be great. Thank
So
you.
You're most welcome, and I'm glad that you're interested. Okay, do I have any other Any public comment? All right, then I'm going to move forward with the December 11th minutes. Do I have any corrections or changes or anything, or you need to? Nope. Okay, I'll accept a motion, please. Supervisor Shooty.
I move to
sorry.
approve the minutes for December 11th, 2024.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, perfect. Those are passed. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 5A, which is the appointment for chair and vice chair for RTC. Do I have anyone that would like to make a motion for this one? Mr. Novak, you gonna do this?
Yep.
Okay.
I will move to continue the chair and vice chair positions with Mayor Bagwell and Supervisor Shooty in those roles respectively.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Thank you so much. We're going to move on then to agenda item 5B. This is discussion and possible action regarding the Gonai Road intersection evaluation and concept layout, including a recommendation to modify the intersection of Gonai and Arrowhead as part of the District 1 Gonai Road Rehab Project. Casey, are you going to give us an update on this one, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Casey Sylvester, Transportation and Traffic Engineer. We're going to talk about an evaluation of intersection control at Arrowhead Drive and Gonai Road. So the intersection is
The big round one. There you go. And then it.
all
Yeah,
right, just for
once in a while it
jump back
works,
up
too.
to the I hit one button but not the other. All right. So the intersection in question is currently always stop control. It's a four-leg intersection located in the north part of Carson City. The lane configurations are the same on each approach. That is to say, there's a dedicated left turn lane and a shared through right. There is one marked crosswalk at this intersection. It runs north-south, and it is along the west leg of the intersection. Another note about this intersection is that two of the approaches slope down into the intersection. That is the northbound and eastbound approaches. And there's quite a bit of turning heavy vehicles at this intersection. And as you'll note from the diagram here with the yellow arrow, some of the trailers track over the approach lanes. It has potential for side swipe possibilities to happen. You can really see how the stop bar and the line has worn away there. Traffic impact studies that have been completed in the area indicate that there's going to be a breakdown of operations as early as 2026 based upon increasing traffic. As part of this study, we had counts collected in the fall of 2024. They confirmed these findings. Operations are poor in the current conditions. So the purpose of this study is to evaluate operational improvements and other deficiencies at this intersection. This location is an important link for the industrial area to the north and east and residential areas to the north and west, and it's the primary connection from those areas to College Parkway and to I-580. We also have a project in design in this area, the Gonai Road Pavement the District 1 Gonai Road Pavement Rehabilitation Project. It will complete a 2-inch mill and fill on Gonai between College Parkway and Old Hot Springs Road, and a full-depth rehabilitation from Old Hot Springs Road to Arrowhead Drive. There's also the local road safety plan has recommendations for the intersection of Old Hot Springs Road and Gonai, and so those improvements will be included in that project as well. That project will be constructed in 2026. There's potential that while we're already in there that we could make operational improvements to this intersection at that time. All right, so our intersection study staff solicited consultant services to evaluate the intersection control. Intersection control refers to signal control, stop control, that sort of thing. We have 3 alternatives, leaving it how it is existing, so no change, a signalized intersection, and a 1-lane roundabout. The intersection is evaluated based upon its layout, the operations, the traffic operations that is, safety, and the cost. So this is the layout for the signal configuration. This is largely the same to how it is currently. We have a dedicated left turn lane, a shared through right. There are added pavement on several of the corners to accommodate the truck tracking issue that I discussed earlier. So by offsetting the left turn, you can see the left turn lanes are offset from the through lanes by about 25 feet. And then also there's extra pavement width, and that allows trucks to swing wider and get their trailer in line before it has a conflict with the approach lane. This alternative would have no right-of-way acquisitions, but it does have that added pavement width. The other alternative that we evaluated is for a roundabout. This is a single-lane roundabout with right turn lanes on the north and south approaches. It's a compact design with a fully mountable center island. This design was set up because it has a lower impact, and you can design it to account for the turning movements of heavy vehicles. And so I had to talk a little bit more about this. There's different types of islands and curbs that you use on a roundabout. The islands that you call a splitter island, which separate the directions of travel on the approaches, as well as sometimes separate the different lanes. Those use a typical curb that would be vertical. However, we have some cases, I'll see if I can get my mouse to show up on here. In the bottom left side of the intersection, there's a sidewalk, but there is also a additional curbed area. We call that a blister. And what the purpose of that is you design it so that the cars don't want to drive up on that curb. And so it helps channelize them into the appropriate places in their lanes and keeps their speeds low, but it allows heavy trucks to track over it. And you would design that the same way as you would your center islands. The heavy truck is able to drive up on that and come back down off of it without it disturbing their load, but also keeping cars in the paved area. Just as a side note, a similar intersection that has a compact, fully mountable roundabout like this is the intersection of Centerville Lane and State Route 88 in the Gardnerville Ranchos area. That intersection has been there for about 7 years. So one of the things we evaluated for these intersections were operations. As we can see here in the existing condition column, the current configuration is already having failing level of service in the AM. By 2026, we'll be below a level of service D in the AM and the PM. The operations decline from there. One note here is that the queue is reported as 51 feet. That obviously is not accurate for an intersection with delay of 200 seconds per vehicle, but there's a limitation of the software related to that. For the signalized intersection, the operational delay is improved with delay as good as 17.7 seconds in the PM in the 2050 design year. The roundabout continues on those improvements with better yet operations with only 16 seconds of delay in the PM in the design year. Safety was also evaluated. This predictive analysis considers the crash history, and then it applies that towards what sort of improvements you could see with changes to the intersection. This does not account for the change in traffic, nor does it account for some of the other features like the grades into the intersection that I mentioned earlier. As we can see, a signalized intersection is a safety benefit over an always stop control, and the roundabout is a further benefit. Jumping back to the grades coming into the intersection, there is some potential as traffic increases in this area that there could be potential for vehicles coming up to the intersection and coming over the crest of the curve, not seeing that there's a queue in front of them, coming up on the queue, going at a high rate of speed, going downhill, and having rear-end collisions. That's something that we've been discussing internally and are cognizant of. And one of the benefits of a roundabout is that it slows traffic down, but it also has rolling queues, which could potentially help address that concern. We also completed cost estimates for these intersections. As I mentioned earlier, the always stop control alternative is same as existing, so zero cost associated with keeping that the same. The signal with the added pavement width and the cost of the signal system comes in at $1.8 million. The roundabout, which includes all of the pavement work in the center islands and the splitter islands and all of that, comes in at $3.2 million. So the study has a recommendation to build the roundabout at this location. The roundabout has the least delay, has the lowest potential for crashes, and it addresses the concern about vehicles coming in over the coming over the hill down into the intersection. We have not allocated funds for this intersection improvement, and staff are considering a couple different funding sources. This week, NDOT opened a call for applications for HSIP funds. We discussed at a previous board meeting the application of STBG funds for this intersection. So there's a couple different things we have options for. As I mentioned earlier, some of the things that made us aware of a need at this intersection were traffic impact studies that have been completed, and we can go down the route of getting developer contributions from those developers for this intersection. So just to summarize, we evaluated the intersection based upon a known operational deficiency, and we evaluated a couple different alternatives. The roundabout alternative best addresses the operations, and it improves upon safety. And so it is the recommended solution. We don't have a timeline for, excuse me, we don't have a timeline for when that could be implemented or a funding avenue determined, but it's something that staff will look into. Questions?
So let's break this into two different discussion points is the way I see this. So let's start first with the treatment. What is the appropriate treatment for the intersection? So leave it alone with, the four-way stop, put in the roundabout, or put in the a signal. So let's start with what we think is the most appropriate treatment for the intersection, if we have a call for that first. Anybody? Mr. Novak.
I could start, and I hope everybody else voices their opinions on it, but I think overall, the four-way stop works quite well. And the crash history is very, very limited, really. And the concern that I have, and I haven't worked in this field for many years, when you put in a traffic signal, people run red lights, and the speeds are a lot higher. And, maybe it costs a little bit more, but if we're going to actually do something, I would say the roundabout is the preferred option, just a matter of finding the money for that. And I think on the concern of going after safety money, you mentioned there was a call for projects. Having been on the local road safety plan committee, I said, I don't think this is our highest priority if we're asking for HSIP money. And, there's other places around Carson and then North Douglas and Lyon as well. It might be a better use of that money. But all things being equal, if you can get the money, yeah, I think that would be a great idea to go with a roundabout. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay. Does someone else want to comment with the treatment? Mr. Dotson?
Yeah, I would echo Greg's comments on it. In an ideal world with unlimited funding, I don't think that there's any question that the roundabout would be the way to go. But I really had a concern looking at the purpose of those HSIP monies. The local road safety plan does not prioritize this intersection. And, we've mentioned other projects for use of those HSIP funds, like back with the pedestrian, the unsignalized
We had 10 of
pedestrian
them or something.
improvements on College. And I guess the other one was North Carson. I can't remember. Nyan Carson, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, those would be my comments.
Okay. Ms. Maloney?
I thought the report was really good. Your presentation was great, so thank you for that. I made a comment the last time this project came to this board that I drive this every day. My kid's school is up there, and there are certain days where drivers maybe aren't as aware, and the delay is worse for 10, 15 minutes, but for most of the day, it's smooth. And for that reason, for me, a traffic signal, which will make delay worse throughout the day, it doesn't seem like the right solution. The way that the staff report reads and my understanding of the funding is that potentially this could receive HSIP funds with no additional local match from Carson City if we could somehow finagle our existing dollars going into Gonai or Arrowhead as our match. And so that is appealing to me, but that I think is part two of your question. So for those reasons, I'm roundabout over signal, but I'm also not sure that this is the priority unless there was a way to get the funding with no additional local match right now.
Ms. Schutte?
I echo the 3 comments that preceded me.
Yeah, I think what's driving me on this, and it sometimes words matter, right? So you look at what staff had listed in the report, and it was about whether or not we add this into the project. And I think that's where the rubber really meets the road that I want to have as a discussion. So I look at concurrence that, so I think you already have that all of us agree it's not the stoplight, right? So unless I've missed anything there, we all agree it's really not a stoplight eligible in our minds. That's not an appropriate solution for the issue. The secondary question becomes the when, right? And so it really does come down to if I can receive HSIP funding because the GONI project is eligible and that money is the match, and I don't have match to do one of the other priorities with HSIP. And so that's more where I need a little more assistance here. So if they're calling for projects, do I have the ability to request HSIP that we're looking at some of our more important intersections or more important safety concerns that we have? Because I definitely don't think this one would prioritize. It only prioritizes if it's because we have a unique opportunity to use match to get dollars. So I think I need a little more from you as to what do you see on that? And it can be your boss, oh, that's a good question. Could be that, but that's really what I'm interested in before I know whether I'm adding it into the current project or not.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm gonna cover this one for Casey as it seems to be a little more broader than the roundabout.
Right.
NDOT released the HSIP call for projects. It's a new call for projects for them. We're definitely excited about it. We pushed for it for the last several months to get us availability to use some of those HSIP funds. It's one of the main reasons we did the local road safety plan was to deliver safety-related projects. So definitely hear you loud and clear on that. One of the intersections that was included as a priority in the local road safety plan was the intersection of Gonai and Hot Springs Road. And so that was in this same corridor and the same project limits, and one that we are probably going to pursue a request for HSIP funding through that grant application. So the timing of this is being possibly requested was one of the reasons we brought it up and discussed it and considered it. I hear you loud and clear on the term in terms of priority and is this the best need? It's a significant ask of HSIP funding, and 3.2 million. We've never asked for that amount before. I don't know that we want to ask all of our HSIP funding that specific roundabout. So, as Commissioner Novak, I believe, mentioned, the vulnerable user, not the vulnerable user project, but the College Parkway Fairview pedestrian safety project that we presented on a couple of months ago. That's another one we're definitely going to be focusing on as part of this new grant request for HSIP funding. So I think we already have some identified projects in the works, and we're working on seeing what else could we ask for. This is just one of those, but maybe it's not the highest priority is what I'm hearing from all of you.
On
So
the
that's how it fits in
call for
the
HSIP,
call, yeah.
I just need a little more information. Are they allowing you to apply for more than one grant? And what is is there match requirement on it?
My understanding is the match is the standard 5% match. It's not clear, although we don't have the final guidance. There's going to be a preliminary meeting, but it's not clear that we're going to be limited to one. I'm assuming we're not going to be limited to one. If we wanted to ask for 2 or 3, why not ask for 2 or 3 projects? Let them tell us, no, we're only going to give you one. I don't want to make that decision for us, but all of that will come back to this board prior to the application. I believe the window will be open 8 or 9 weeks. So there's definitely time. We're going to come back to you to have a discussion about the grant application process.
Okay.
Chris,
helps.
I looked at the E-STIP earlier today, and from what I remember, Nevada gets about $28 million a year in safety money. And there was, I don't know, over 10, 12 million for studies, for doing analysis and database and this and that. So I don't know how much more money will come out for actual physical construction projects, but I definitely recommend going after anything that you can that we covered in the local road safety plan, because that's the way that's supposed to step from one to the other.
I think that's really why we're having this discussion is I thought that first we did this study and then something that, I don't know, for me, it's always about if you do a study and you adopt it, then you move to implementation. And so if indeed there's a Gonai Hot Springs, you know, a tiering in that road safety plan that we already adopted, then I may okay if this fits within that request. I just, I really want to stick to the plan that we all adopted. That's just my personal druthers here is because it had a study and a plan, so.
I
Ms.
agree.
Boney?
Within the broader context of what we can expect over the next couple of years, I think we can expect to see potentially some additional federal funding for things like freight and commerce, where this project might rank really strongly when we're talking about truck delay. And so I would tend to agree with some of the other comments on prioritizing the pedestrian stuff first.
So let's talk about then the options here that we have. So potentially we could tell you that, yes, we think it should be a roundabout, not a stoplight. We could then talk about the other option, because I think when you adopt plans or studies or things of that nature, this then is already completed and a potential springboard for anyone else that wants to do development there, right? So I look at this as this tells those that might be developing in the area, unlike when Carson Medical Group, they did the standard traffic study or whatever that's required versus something in depth like this. So we have an opportunity then to say, we know that a roundabout would be, you know, just rounding off figures, $4 million. And so we would then be doing participation agreements with those that would be utilizing that intersection to get for payment and a source of funding for it. So I'm kind of in favor of, you know, we're adopting for that purpose to say, yes, we want that intersection to have a roundabout. So to open up the opportunities for anybody coming in for development, they'll know what their participation portions already potentially would be. And I don't know that it means they don't have to do their, I'm just kind of throwing this out here as an idea, then their traffic study for that is pretty much accomplished, right? Because we've already made the decision that it's going to get a roundabout. You're going to get one of those neat little agreements that we do, and you're going to pay your share into the roundabout. So I'd like your guys' thoughts on that discussion.
I'm really supportive, and when we did the Greening America's Capital study for William Street, that was ready and on the shelf, and that allowed us to go after additional funding too. So this will additionally serve that purpose.
No, I agree with that approach, and I don't know what other pending development is coming. I see planning commission stuff and things get approved, but do they actually get built?
Right.
So in this part of town, I expect more things to come. And if we are discussing, you know, freight in the future, I remember when we built Arrowhead the first time, that was kind of as a freight access road.
Correct.
And I would consider, well, under the pavement world, that stretch of road needs quite a bit, especially if it's going to be more of a truck route. So pursue all those options you can.
General in agreement. Shishiri. Okay, let me take some public comment to see if somebody has any other great ideas that I might we overlook. Mr. French.
Thank you, Mr. French, Carson City, Nevada. Where did we go from a four-way stop for now is okay to now considering the roundabout and such. I understand that you want to get some things up and open so that future developers, but the money right now, and if we do have money for pedestrian safety, I'm not sure why we can't use that on some of the other projects, which I've found out are listed and in priority for the ADA ramps and such. But in this case, I've just lost my location on this discussion because all of a sudden it went from, we're okay where we are. If you go for the vote, you are just putting
For
it
now.
in a future type space. And it's not going to be funding for now because of our percentage of the 5%. Okay, thank you very much.
You actually caught on more than you thought.
Well, I just,
Yeah, I think, oh wait, let me see if there's any other public comment. I apologize. Sorry. Then we'll come back up here for discussion. I should have known you wanted to. Hi.
How's that, better? Okay, sorry, first time I've ever done this. Bob Roll from Cinderlight Trucking. We just had some concerns on roundabout, stoplight, four-way stop. Roundabouts in general are not truck-friendly. We're 105 feet long. There's not a roundabout around here that we can get around without rolling up on it.
Correct.
Great presentation as far as different kind of roundabouts that you can build. Curbs are not well. You drive over curbs, you break things, load shift and all that. So if you can make them flat, if you're coming south on Gonai Road and want to make a left or go east on Arrowhead, there's no way you can make that turn on that roundabout on that picture. It won't. You can't make it without running up on something. Same if you're going, west on Arrowhead and want to go south on Gonai Road, make that left-hand turn. You can't make that turn. Not at 105 feet. It's just not feasible with that type of roundabout. But I know there's different kinds. Just wanted you guys to take it into consideration. Roundabouts with ease of traffic and people's patience, nobody wants to get behind a truck. And so if a truck pulls up to a roundabout, nobody's going to let them in, especially when they're that long, and it's going to back things up. People are going to get behind them because they don't take off fast. They take off very slow, and they won't be able to get in. So those were our concerns.
So let me ask it different. Are you making a recommendation that it stays as a four-way stop sign, that that's the best actual clearance?
I would say as
Because the
four-way
amounts of
stop sign,
traffic and heavy
amounts
truck?
traffic, or a stoplight. I would lose those two. Four-way stop works fine for us. Everybody stops, everybody goes. It does back
Everybody
up
gets a
sometimes.
turn.
Everybody gets a turn, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do I have any other public comment? Absolutely.
Yes, Gene Sheldon, Carson City. To start this off, I'm in favor of roundabouts in the proper application. I just don't think Gonai and Arrowhead are the proper application. We have, my brothers and I, 6 industrial parcels with buildings on both Gonai and Arrowhead. And I probably go through that intersection 4 or 5 times a day going between buildings. And we're trying to solve a problem that's about an hour long in the morning and about an hour and a half long in the afternoon. The rest of the time, the four-way stop works perfectly. But when the business is let out and when everybody's going to work in the morning, that's what we're trying to solve. And I'm not necessarily against the roundabout, but as it's shown, I don't believe it would accommodate the heavy trucking that we do. We do a lot of heavy industrial installation. We've put in equipment at Panasonic, Tesla, and so forth. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've come up to the intersection going west on Arrowhead and turning south onto Gonai, in which a truck trying to turn right I've had to back up in the left-hand turn lane so that they can swing out wide through the left-hand turn. And in fact, sometimes they're even in the through direction in the west direction. So if you're going to do the roundabout, the right-hand turns have to have very large radiuses. Maybe take some of the airport property on that corner because you can't, the drawings that I saw, they're going to put lane separator curbing in. And there's no way that those trucks are going to get around those right-hand corners with the separators in if they can't violate either the left-hand turn or or the through lanes.
So are you two suggesting we just keep the stop signs?
Not necessarily. Like I say, I'm generally for roundabouts, but the problem is we need to do some real serious study on the trucks that are going through there. I mean, we have 4-axle trailers and 3-axle tractors, 7-axle vehicles that would have a heck of a time going through a roundabout. I mean, I know we can drive over the center, and that can be done, but the right-hand turns are going to be very difficult with those lane separators in there.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Is there any other public comment? Okay, we'll bring it back up here because I think that really was another discussion point that I even was having with Chris this morning. When you look at the limited dollars that we have, we weren't successful getting more dollars, and so we really have to make some really hard decisions. And one of the things our current policy does is says if you get an F on your report card, it goes on the list for an improvement project. But maybe the point that we're going to have to look at that and say, maybe the F has to be all day long instead of just 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the afternoon, which is what happens where I live, right? 5th Street. It's awful when school is beginning. I mean, that's the most horrendous thing you ever want to see for 30 minutes. I do not want to even leave my home because I cannot make a left-hand turn. I can't do it. There's just wall-to-wall parents dropping off children, right? And so it's like, forget it. I need to wait a half hour and then I can go and it's wide open and clear. So I guess that really is overall even discussion point for us. And that's what I meant. Do we leave the 4-way for now, that we're not going to add this into the project at this time because we want to complete this project, right, in 2026? This is our 2026 project, right, for construction?
That's the tentative schedule, yes, Madam Chair.
Yeah, so I guess I'm having a hard time deciding that we would, so I think I'm not wanting to add it into the project at this time, so it wouldn't be where we would be going right away, but that we do keep the study and then really determine if there is a feasible roundabout that would meet the requirements of the trucks that utilize that intersection, if that makes sense. Does that make sense where we're talking?
That does make sense. I do want to throw out that as part of this analysis, we did do truck tracking analysis, and this intersection is hard to tell on this slide, but this intersection is kind of pushed over to the side a little bit to the west and to the south a little bit as well to help accommodate those movements. And right now on this particular image we have up right here, north is to the right. And so for scale, the intersection approaches that look most difficult to use are really from that side that's currently restricted to trucks, that west leg. And so all of the approaches have been evaluated to assume a truck could go over them. And it is true that trucks would have to use the center island. It should be designed. What I was trying to get at, we're talking about the center island and how the curves are designed, is we want to use a flatter curve than usual to help accommodate the trucks. We don't want them to have a hard time going up over a tall curb. I've had a chance to work on a number of roundabout projects, including some where that went not very well, and we got a lot of feedback on it, and we learned some things.
Okay. Anyone, thoughts?
Casey?
It's Maloney. Oh, go ahead.
I know this is early in design and you've laid some of the stuff out. Do we consider a larger roundabout? Would that help at all? Or do you think this is an acceptable size for your trucks that we have?
I think this is an acceptable size. If we went larger, we would end up having the landscaping eventually in the middle, and that ends up requiring some right-of-way, but that's not really necessary because the trucks are going to track on the island just as much as they would here. It's just a matter of whether or not they're going through the actual geometric center of the island or going around the edge of it. And so From an operational standpoint, this should be equivalent to a larger roundabout. From a truck tracking standpoint, it's not really an improvement to go bigger for the design trucks we're looking at.
So your truck tracking was consistent with the trucks that were described in the public comment?
I believe that the size we used is a WB67, and I think that what was referred to for Cinderlight was the WB67, but plus the extra trailer on the back. And so we did not run the templates for that size.
For the extra trailer.
The extra
Yeah.
trailer.
That's what I'm worried about. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you have more? Lisa? Okay. Ms. Maloney?
I think I'm tracking with what you proposed, Madam Mayor. I just to double check, I would still be supportive of however the appropriate way is to keep this on the list where if projects are coming in nearby that are contributing toward the degradation of the intersection, that they contribute and that stays on staff's radar in the meantime.
That's exactly what I'm interested in is we're not going to add it in for the project that we are currently slating for the 2026 construction period. You can always come back and amend if something miraculous hands us money from, well, somewhere, right? So I'm not saying it couldn't get added into the project, but I'm not saying at this point that I feel we should add it in. But I do feel that the roundabout is the long-term potential solution for this, and that we would then utilize that as a mechanism to provide to planning if there's any projects coming forward in that area. That's what I'm suggesting.
I think it's an important long-term plan in that there will be development, and I think this is an opportunity to design with the actual truck size and what is actually used so that there can be a clear expectation of what's available and what the needs are.
Okay, does that, everybody good? Any other further thoughts, questions? Mr.
have one.
Dotson?
Madam Chair. I think that something that I didn't recognize with the roundabout situation was a comment that the gentleman from Cinderlight made about the shifting loads mounting that curb. So in addition to what Member Schutte just alluded to, I think, maybe we ought to take another look at that to make sure that, that isn't a showstopper and, proceed along those lines.
That any actual design, if it came forward, would be based on the actual truck sizes that we know are utilizing the intersection, so that we make sure that the study and the actual lines up, right? That's what we're after, is that, whoops, we didn't design it to what we thought the best practice was. We designed it to the actual practice. So, thank you. So I think all we really need is, you do want us to just approve the study itself so that we close this item, that we are not adding it to the Gonai Road project, right? That's all you need. Okay, I'll accept a motion, or that could, go ahead.
I move to approve the study as presented and to not add the recommendations of the study to the existing project.
And to use it as the baseline for future development.
And
for
to use the recommendations from the study when considering future development.
I will second that.
Perfect. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Great. Any noes? Let the record reflect that was unanimous. Good job, everyone. Okay, we're now on to agenda item 6A, which is the Transportation Manager's Report. Mr. Martinovich, what have you got for us?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, Mr. Costa stole some of my thunder, but I appreciate him bringing it up in that The Board of Supervisors did approve the additional funding for the District 2 and District 4 ARPA project, as well as the additional funding for the Hillview Pavement Preservation and Lapeer Drive reconstruction or patching project, essentially, in the form of $100,000 to each of those two projects. And those contracts have been executed under the wire for the ARPA requirements, and so those projects will be occurring over the next year to get those done. So good news there. We are making a little tiny dent in our local road needs, so always beneficial there. I did want to note and bring up a couple items that Mr. Costa brought up during his public comments related to how the projects were selected for the ARPA projects themselves. The District 2, District 4 projects, and as well as all the other ARPA projects, were selected through a process that we used prior to the one we created this year. It was done a couple of years ago in coordination with the Board of Supervisors and the RTC on different local road projects that were eligible for preservation. The projects that were done under the ARPA funding were project up in District 5 up on Silver Oak and Vista Lane in that area. In District 1, we did a bunch of streets near Airport Road, including Dory, Bunch, Snedden, and Poole with ARPA funding. District 3 is Menlo Drive, and District 2 and 4 are District 2 is up in the Table Rock, Long Ridge, and District 4 is down by Baker and Pioche and Lander and some of those streets. So those are selected through that process, and we've been moving forward. Hillview was another project that was under design and identified through the District 4 effort. We actually had a design sort of on the books, and we weren't able to fund that through any other source, and so we had these plans ready, and we essentially rolled that out for funding using the extra ARPA funds. And Lapeer was based on the terrible pavement condition up there and just the constant need to go up and patch and patch and patch and patch and patch. And so the idea was let's do a large patch, let's take care of this, knowing that there's a lot of need in Lapeer still that we'll have to address at some point in the future. So I wanted to address those comments. Lastly, he mentioned an issue on Lampa Lane. Lampa Lane there is an active project on Lampa Lane. It's for sewer replacement, so it has nothing to do with transportation. They're doing some underground sewer replacement work. I think there's slip lining, which is essentially putting a pipe inside of a pipe to make that, so they're not doing a lot of trenching for that work. So that's not transportation related. The project preservation on Lampa Lane occurred from US 50 to essentially Carmine or Northridge. That was the preservation portion of that project, that S curve through there. So I wanted to touch on those. In other items, we are working with NDOT now to execute new STBG agreements for the projects on Little Lane, Curry Street that we talked about. So those requests have gone into them, and we're working through those agreements, and those agreements will come to this board for approval at some point. And I thought I had one other item, but I don't see it on my list. So I guess that concludes my transportation manager's report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. How about we go through the November street operations report? Is there anything of significance you'd like to point out?
I do want to point out, and I don't know if it's reflected quite on this report yet, but our crews are still actively working on pothole repairs. We're still pouring concrete in January. Our weather has been sufficient that we're able to continue to do street maintenance work that we typically aren't usually able to do in the wintertime. So that's a positive, sort of, in a way, where we're still getting work done. We're continuing to make improvements. We're trying to get ahead a little bit. But there was nothing specific on this list that I wanted to highlight. I don't believe.
I have just a general question then on this report, and I'd like to talk a little bit about the ADA ramps. So here we say fiscal year to date 2. That means 2 we've repaired that had issues with an identified ADA ramp?
Correct. This either means 2 ramps have been added that were non-existent, or 2 ramps that have been repaired, but done by street operations only, not as part of the broader project that are done by contractors.
Because we did a lot of ADA ramp corrections or updates on 5th Street near the school there. All of those ramps were improved. There was tons and tons of corners done there, and because I had a lot of calls, why are you doing that? Those aren't bad. I said, because we want them to be in compliance. Because I think another thing that people forget is, don't we have an annual report or something that we do to the federal government that talks about our progress on ramps and, yeah, right? So I just want to make sure we are always making progress. There's always more on that list than we can possibly get to, but we are making progress on the ramps.
Correct. We are making progress on the ramps. And we do have, for the benefit of this commission, which I know many of you likely know, we do have the ADA transition plan. That plan does have a map and documents all the ramps in Carson City that are missing, or nearly all the ramps that are missing, non-compliant, or compliant. We try to maintain and update that every time our project gets completed. We update our database.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Does anybody else have anything on the,
Hey, Chris?
Mr. Novak?
So far, we've been lucky. 0 weather events for snow and ice, so which is probably why your crews can do other things. But at some point, it is going to snow, and just remind everybody, you're supposed to shovel your own sidewalk. And I looked it up, since DC has a snowstorm, they freak out. Their local law, I don't know how they enforce it, but it was like you have to clear your sidewalk 8 hours after the storm stops, when the sun comes up. So I have no idea how they do that in Washington, DC, but it's on the books.
Well, and then this is through November, so they don't have the December, but hats off to the street operations crew. Please let them know how delightful the Christmas decorations were, and I saw them out the other day taking them down. I know it's a ton of effort to put them up and to take them down, but I just can't stress enough how much community joy it brings. I got tons and tons of compliments of how much they enjoyed walking downtown with all the lights, and the just really, really brings just joy to the community. So please pass that on to the street operations staff, that we know it's a lot of work, but the community really appreciates it. So thank you. Nobody else has anything on the November report? We'll go to agenda item 6C, which is any future agenda items or anything that Chris is going to tell us about, or any of you would like.
I'll just note that I added a one-time graph here at the back of the report on the final page, page 1, packet page 159. This is a summary, just as a data point for reference, of revenue in gallons sold in Carson City as associated with the 9-cent gasoline tax and the 5-cent diesel tax. So this goes back 20 years, looking back to federal or fiscal year 2006. The revenue we brought in from the 9-cent tax was $3.4 million. The revenue we're projected to bring in for fiscal year 25 from that same tax is $3.8 million. That's an increase of $400,000 over 20 years. I think it's important to just note that that revenue is our main revenue for doing projects. On the diesel tax side, we have much less history on this because we haven't been collecting the revenue for that long. You can see in the first year we collected revenue, it was $417, and we're projecting this year to be $562,000 from the 5-cent diesel tax. I want to I plan to provide little graphs like this going forward, just for data points as they come up, just for reference and background, to kind of continue to tell the story of our funding source and be as transparent as possible on it. So with that, I'm happy to take other questions, but that's all I wanted to highlight.
And then, only because we were talking earlier, if you look at packet page 158, that shows the developer contributions on other projects that we're holding towards their contributions for projects. And so that's where we maintain it and keep it listed, just so everyone knows that it does not go for general road or general maintenance. It has to go for the project it was collected on its behalf. So we do keep track of that. Anybody else have any questions or thoughts on this? Okay, then we're going to move on to our final public comment for Agenda 7. Do we have any final public comment this evening? Mr. Costa.
Mark Costa, Carson City resident. I don't know if this is appropriate to go ahead and ask, but I was wondering, as I understand it, the Carson City budget process doesn't allow the RTC to request a budget or an agency request like the state does. So what I'm wondering is, when will we be getting guidance from the Board of Supervisors or the Finance Department or somebody as to what funding, if anything, we'll be getting from the general Carson City budget
So
for next fiscal year, excuse me.
I'll make sure you're through with your 3
Yeah, I'm
minutes.
through. Yeah.
Okay. I don't ever want
My
to
3
jump
minutes.
in someone's time.
3 minutes of fame.
There you go. So the Finance Department has already submitted documents to the department heads to begin to do their budget requests. Budget requests are done by every single department on things that they would like, and so RTC is no different than any other agency. Whether or not the executive office is going to entertain what we would call enhancements or supplementals or things year to year depends upon what the revenue forecasts are and what the general rule of thumb has been for those departments. So in general, the RTC does not receive general fund. ARPA was unique in that for the first time in a very long time, the Board of Supervisors designated ARPA dollars, which were like general fund dollars, and did it specifically for local roads, which is why, again, it went a little bit different in the mechanism on how roads are selected for priorities, because in this case, we forced them to local roads and we forced them to each transportation district instead of our standard process of going around the globe in the 5 years. We forced some into each one. So we did it a little bit different, but the process is open now. It'll come to the board and supervisors. We really work on budget pretty much March through May, that we work on the details of everybody's budgets.
Do they release like a request or a temporary budget, not a temporary, but a forecast, for a tentative forecast for next fiscal year for the public to comment on?
Yes,
Okay.
but
And
it'll
that-
be at the board of supervisor level. Yes.
Exactly, that's kind of what I thought.
Yes.
So that'll be up in the same time frame you're talking about, March to
Correct.
May?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're most welcome.
Mayor, quick question on that. Where does the match for the transit portion of RTC come from?
So we do the calculation each year on I'm going to laugh, on the back of Lucia's napkin. No, that's our inside joke. But we have a whole spreadsheet now that's all designed and done with an Excel spreadsheet. And so we'll plug in the answers and then it'll tell how much match. That's given to the finance department to plug into the budget. And just as a reminder, what the Board of Supervisors did on transit was say that we weren't going to expand services. So it will get its match to keep its services, but at this time, we don't have dollars to add more bus stops further out, things like that. So, but it will get its match to just keep it stable. And that was good doing TTD today too, because that very same discussion is everything they're having there, right? Transit's getting more and more expensive to run, and the cost for revenue hour and all that was not pretty when you start looking at the numbers and you go, what's happened over the last 5 years? It's more expensive. It's really that simple. So hope that answers what Mr. Costa was looking for. Do I have any other? No? Okay, I don't see any other. Then with that, we are adjourned, and thank you all for a happy new year start of our meetings. Thank you.